Ferrari is adding to its lineup of front engine cars. With this, it's the Roma. Now, a lot of people are going to look at this and think, well, isn't this just a coupe version of the Portofino? Well, yes and no, because although it does share some of the core architecture, 70+% of this car is new. It's also 100 kilograms lighter or thereabouts, and the whole dimensions of the car are slightly different. So the car is lower, it's also wider, it's got a wider front track and a wider rear track. Now, the engine is also slightly improved. It's got 20 horsepower more, also made it to a newer 8-speed automatic transmission. Now, that's got a smaller, more compact setup. It also shifts quicker and it's set lower down, thus improving the center of gravity of the car. But let's talk about styling for a moment, because this is a very svelte and sleek looking machine. It's got this new look around the front, which is very much a nod to the older cars of the past, although that grille now has a more unique and more modern shape. Now, the Roma's elegant styling continues around the rear. You've got further nods to the company's past with this camtail design at the back, and you've got a discrete spoiler that deploys as the speed increases to one of two different settings. At its maximum attack angle, it will generate 95 kilograms of downforce. Now, this being a GT car, it's also a very practical Ferrari, and you've got a pretty generous boot opening in here that'll easily swallow up a couple of travel cases if you need to go away. And one further feature is, as you can see, all these Ferraris get a personalization plate on the back. Now, inside the Roma, there's a whole new concept of cabin design. It's got this two-pod setup, which you can see here, and then this central spine, which houses an 8.4-inch touchscreen display. The automatic transmission has this really nice retro kind of touch, I suppose you could call it, to the old gated manuals, how they used to be. So you've got your reverse and then automatic or manual, and then your launch controls, and either side of that then you've got your window controls and a small little cup holder here. One other neat feature is the key, which pops in just in here. It's got a new key. It looks very much like a badge of a car almost, but it is kind of leather backed, and it's really neat the way it actually pops in. You pop it in and just push it in and it just holds it in place. Looks very nice, looks like a badge actually. But then you come to the main part of the Roma, and that's the interior. You've got this new steering wheel. It's the same as what appears on the SF90 Stradale, and then in front of it you have this fantastic curved 16-inch display. Really does look crystal clear. It looks great. You can go through a number of different menus. You can have your full map shown up if you want, and then the rest of it, although you've still got a lot of control and functionality in the Roma on the steering wheel, it's actually quite plain in the way that they've actually removed most of the buttons now. So instead you have a mostly capacitive button display. That means that essentially once it's off, all you have illuminated is this engine start on the front. You've also still got the Manettino there. It's now a 5-stage setting. It's very easy to use, and it's the first time that one of Ferrari's GT cars has had the race mode. Of course, you still have these nice, well-weighted paddles if you want to shift manually. Other than that, there's also a display here for the passenger, which will show them how fast you're driving and how much fun they should be having. Now, there are also rear seats. Now, Ferrari doesn't call this a 2+2. They call it a 2+ because they are very small seats, but they're useful if you want to put small kids in, or even if you just want to use it to throw in an extra set of bags if you're going away for a long weekend. The Roma equips itself quite well at being an everyday sports car. After all, you've got some token rear seats in the back, you've got a pretty useful boot considering the size of the car, but you still have all the performance when you want it. And then when you want to just take it easy, you can just switch the Manettino back to comfort setting, and the car will just amble around town. You always have that nice soundtrack in the background, but it's not a screamer. It doesn't get too mundane. Even on a motorway, actually, it's not that bad. So let's talk about the everyday stuff. It's got an 8-speed automatic transmission, and that will, for the most part, when you're not pushing on, just reside in the higher gears and exploit the engine's torque, of which there is quite a lot. The gear shifts are actually really smooth. For the most part, you'll not even notice them. They do become a little bit more of a kick down when you are in the sport mode, but for the most part, if you leave the Manettino in its comfort setting, it will be very, very compliant, very civilized, not that loud, not that raucous. It's not going to annoy your neighbors all that much. Although, well, I mean, if you've got a Ferrari Roma in your driveway, your neighbors are probably going to be a little bit annoyed. But for the most part, it just does the everyday stuff very well. The seats are supportive, they're comfortable, you've got pretty good visibility all around, you've got decent door mirrors. Even the rear view actually isn't that bad considering how sloped that rear window is. So all those practical things are pretty good. But of course, you're not going to buy a Ferrari and just drive in traffic, right? Because that would just be a sin, wouldn't it? Then when you're finished with your commute and you want to have some fun, you switch that Manettino to sport and go. That's really where the engine absolutely transforms. You see this whole other side to the Roma. 0 to 100 in 3.4 seconds, and it's just so vocal, it's so quick. The gear changes come quicker almost than you can pull the paddles, but it grips too. It's got phenomenal traction. Ferrari also throws all of its best electronic aids at this, so it's got the latest side slip control, give you all the confidence you need. So it's that little bit of an extra safety blanket there for you just in case. But it's just so much fun. This car, even though it's front engined, it doesn't behave like a real front engine car. It's not, you don't have that huge amount of weight in the nose. It turns in very, very quickly, nice and sharp. It just puts the power down everywhere. You just give it the smallest little squirt. Occasionally you'll get a little bit of a wiggle as the back kicks out, but it's, you know, when the drive aids work, they're not overly intrusive. The steering feels absolutely spot on. Even though this is an electrically assisted system, it's just got such a nice amount of balance to it. The weighting feels absolutely spot on for the car in this sport mode. Even though this is an electrically assisted system, it's got a very hydraulic, old school kind of feel to it. It's just got a nice amount of weighting to it. As you turn in, you can feel quite a degree of connection to the front axle. And that really just highlights how far along these electrically assisted steering systems have come. So it's got a great front end as well. Because that engine is set a little bit further back, it takes some of the weight off the front axle, and also the weight is now set lower down in the car. The center of gravity is lower. It doesn't have that extra weight that the folding roof mechanism of the Portofino has, so all the weight is a little bit lower down in the car, and that shows itself in how it handles. In the corners it stays flat. I just couldn't induce any kind of understeer unless you do something absolutely silly. The front end just feels sharp, and it gives you that confidence in the front end that it's going to stick. You don't feel like there's any weight there at all. This doesn't really handle like you'd expect a front engine Ferrari to handle. And aside from the monster stopping power, what's actually just as impressive is the amount of brake feel that you have in that pedal. So when you are, let's just dial this back a bit, when you are just driving along in everyday traffic and in commuting, you've actually got quite a good feel from the brake pedal. In the past, carbon ceramics always had a bit of a reputation for being very much quite wooden feeling, but you've got quite a nice feel to the brake pedal. It's very easy to modulate. Now, this isn't the brake-by-wire system that Ferrari is now using in some of its other models, so it is still a more conventional system, but nevertheless you've got huge stopping power from those carbon ceramic brakes, and you've then got that really nice brake pedal feel as well, so works really nicely as a whole package. What I like most about the Roma is that it doesn't feel like it's compromised in any way. You get sharp handling, the crisp responsiveness, that great engine of a sports car, you still get the practical features as well. You've got a decent boot, you've got seats in the rear, and it's compliant. It does the everyday stuff, it does the boring stuff really, really well, but it still has plenty to offer when you do want to get it out there and enjoy your driving, get the most out of this car and exploit that engine. And it loves to be exploited. This is an engine that absolutely screams when you want it to. It's just an absolute joy to drive, and really it's for moments like this that you'll buy a Ferrari Roma. For a lot of people, the Roma is going to be their first experience into the world of Ferrari ownership. And I have to say, as a package, I couldn't think of a better way to do it. So that's our review of the Ferrari Roma. Hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please get involved in the comments below. Let us know what you think, and remember to like the video. As ever, we'd always ask you to please subscribe to the Complete Car YouTube channel.